Okay, so we're gonna start with a 9" by 15" rectangle, and we are going to just hem a tiny little hem on both of the short ends, so the 9" sides. If you find it helpful, you can iron the hem down so that you don't have to fold and go, or you can use pins. But it's just a really tiny, very tight little hem. And the purpose of it is basically just so you don't have the raw edges inside of the pocket once your mask is finished. And then once you have those ends trimmed, to trim off all of your little pieces, you're going to measure out across these two 9" sides. Put your pretty sides together, wrong sides out. Match up the tops that you had just hemmed, and you're going to take your ruler and you're going to measure. This is I'm using a friction pen. I found these on Amazon. They're pretty cool. As soon as you apply heat, the ink mark is completely gone. So 3 inches and 6 inches. Okay. And then you're going to sew from this edge to the mark. No sewing in between the marks. From this mark to this edge, you'll sew. Reinforce the starts and finishes of each section, just to make sure you're not going to come undone at some point, especially near your marks, because that's where your pocket hole is going to be, and that's going to get some pressure. So I just picked up the foot and moved the fabric over to the next line, so I'm not sewing in between the 2 marks I made. Then you're going to take this and trim again. You see this little pucker I have right there? That's where I moved the fabric and sewed. So I need to make sure that I'm trimming that off so there's no pucker. Okay. Okay, so my iron is hot. I'm going to iron these flat. Now this has a pattern. Do you see when it's open, these ones are going to be upside down? If it's sitting on your face, these ones will be right side up. So I'm going to turn it so the ones that are right side up are away from me, and I'm going to use just a small, maybe 1/4 inch above this when it's folded open, and I'm going to iron that out flat. Okay, just like that. Now we're going to attach 2 pieces of 6" elastic to the inside of the mask. So you're going to open it up, put it down one side so that it's sticking up just a little so that you'll be able to see the elastic. Make sure your elastic does not get twisted. And then I'm going to just kind of pull a little, make sure, yep, no twist. Okay. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. And give a little pull, make sure not twisted. Now we're going to sew those 2 edges shut. And I always reinforce where the elastic is sitting because, you know, that's going to get tugged and pulled on. So Make sure your fabric is not bunching underneath and that it's staying level, so the sides are even. Now when you get towards the end, you see it's all bunched up. Where your pin is and your elastic, you're gonna pull that straight, and you see it bunched up at the back. That's okay, because now I need to sew this part. So making sure that the next part I'm sewing is nice and straight. I'm gonna hold the elastic with my fingers so that it doesn't slide out. Okay, and do that to the other side. Okay. Okay, and then I'm sewing the second side now, reinforcing the elastic. As you're sewing down, you feel where the elastic's at, making sure I'm not sewing the elastic into this seam, because that'll prevent you from having the little ear part. So make sure that when you pull it, your elastic is staying on the side. Again, holding the elastic so it doesn't slip through, and reinforcing the edges. Okay, so now I'm just going to trim at a little angle these corners off. It helps the corners look more like corners, so they're not rounded, they'll be more pointy. And as you're trimming this, do you see this is kind of a little funky? I'm just going to trim that too. So that doesn't matter. It's going to be on the inside. No one's going to see it. Okay. Now the pocket that you made is right here, and you're going to turn your mask right side out. You can pull on the elastic to help pull your corners out. Okay. And then we're going to go iron this. Okay, so my iron is hot. I'm going to make sure that these are flat, that there's nothing poking through the opposite way before I iron. And then I'm just going to push this through nice and flat. Before I do the edges, I want to make sure that it's not tucked inside. So I'm just going to roll, make sure the seam is pushed all the way out, and then run the iron over it. That way you get all of your fabric, not just part. So once you iron it, it's going to be kind of tricky to undo. You'll have to re-iron and make sure you have that steam mode on to repress the seam. So just make sure it's right the first time, and then you don't have to worry about that. Okay, the next part, we're going to measure for the pleats. I have my pocket side on this on the left, and I'm going to measure. I'm going to mark with my pen again, just every 1 inch. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 inches. I'm going to do the same thing on the other end of the mask. And this is going to help create my pleats. Okay. Now you're going to fold the first line backwards and then up to the second line. So this is making a pleat, and you're going to pin that, and then you're going to move to the other side, again folding backwards and then up. That forms a pleat, making sure these edges are even. Now I'm going to take this next line, which is the third line, and I'm going to fold it up to the fourth line. Again, making sure the edges are even, pinning it in place. Same with the other side. Making sure those edges are even. And I'm going to iron the pleats down because it makes it a lot easier to sew the pleats if they're ironed flat. Okay, so to iron the pleats, I'm just gonna set my hot iron down, and I'm gonna iron just kind of in between the pins. If you accidentally put your iron on the pins, it's not gonna hurt your mask, but if you leave it there too long, it will warp your pins. So try to be careful of that. Now we're ready to sew our pleats. So I'm gonna put, the pleats are facing me, so the opening faces me. And I like to reinforce the pleats, so as I'm sewing, I'm gonna walk it backwards on each pleat. That way it's just a little reinforced, okay? And then walk it back again at the top just to kind of lock in those stitches. It gives the elastic just a little something extra too. Okay, trim off my edges. And now again, this is a little awkward because you want the pleats facing you so they don't come unpleated. We're gonna sew the next side. Removing pins as you go. Trimming your little strings again. And you're done. This is your mask. So the side with the pocket goes against your face and the other side goes out.